Let's say we have a JavaScript function called fun, and all it does is return a value of 1. Let's execute this function and assign the result to the result variable and print it out. I'm going to run this code, and you will see in console, all it does is print out the result of this function. Now, as soon as you convert this function to asynchronous by adding the async keyword, let's run this code again. Now you will see we actually return a promise, even if the value was 1. Now, because async functions always return a promise, we can create our own promise here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Return new promise. And here we need to specify accept, reject. Inside a promise, you don't have return values, but instead you use one of these functions. So I'm going to go ahead and accept, and the return value that you want to return actually goes inside this accept function. So let's go ahead and move this into here and run the code again. You will see that we return a promise, but it's still pending. So whenever you use the async function, whenever you call it to return this value, you actually have to use it together with a wait keyword. Now, the reason we do that is we don't always actually know when the promise will return. What if here we have a fetch or access or some other call that takes a long time? So what await does is it actually waits for this promise to guarantee that we always get this result on this line of code. Now, I'm going to show you a practical example. I'm going to create another async function just like this one and call it getDogs. So inside we have a promise. I'm going to use a JavaScript timer. And so basically this means that this callback function is going to execute 1 second after this function call. Remember that inside a promise, we can have a function that takes a little longer than usual. Now I'm going to use the accept function here and print out dogs, so we know that we're inside this function. I'm going to create another function and call it getCats. And here we're going to also say cats, and we're going to return it in 3 seconds. So we return dogs in 1 second and cats in 3 seconds. Now keep in mind that these functions here, they could have been fetch calls to some slow API, so we don't really know exactly when they will return. What if this function takes 4 seconds and this one takes 1? We don't have really a way of knowing that. So having said that, you still retain control over which function gets called and returned first, regardless of how much time they take. So for example, notice how in this case we return dogs and cats, but if I change the order of these and run it again, we're going to have a longer pause, and then they will both return. So as you can see, await allows us to change the order in which we receive these values with unknown time on their return value. But using await actually gives you a chance to control when you want to receive those values and when you want to use them and in which order. So this tutorial was never meant to be anything other than a simple explanation of async and await in JavaScript. If you have any comments or want me to create any specific tutorials, please post a comment or subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next tutorial, guys.